Hi everyone, thanks for joining us again for another workshop in the Polkadot Educate series. Today we have Bruno joining us, who I'm going to invite to the stage to talk about the easy way to build on Polkadot using POP. So just as he gets ready to join the stage, how's everyone doing today? Hi Bruno.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. I will stop sharing my screen. You can go ahead and share yours.
So good morning, everyone. I'm in Pennsylvania. And if it's not good morning for you, then good afternoon, good evening, and good night. All right. So can you all see my screen? Should I get started, Rebecca?
Yep, we can see your screen. You can get started.
All right. So welcome. I'm going to put a timer here so I don't go over. Let's see here. So today we're going to discuss about POP and why it's the easy way to build on Polkadot. So my name is Bruno. I'm a co-founder at Rogue. Rogue is the engineering company behind the POP products. And you can see there that's on POP.io. That's the Twitter and the Telegram as well. So you're welcome to join on there. The agenda today, we're going to discuss about like, what is POP? When we say POP, what is it? What's POP CLI? What is POP network? And if you're interested in POP, like how do you get started? And we're actually going to do a deep dive, and I'm going to show you how to build a smart contract using the POP CLI tool. And finally, we'll end with community and how to contribute if you have an interest in contributing. So what's POP? I see a lot online out there like, okay, POP is this, POP is that. So POP is a platform. So when we say POP is a platform. You can just say POP shorthand. And it's a developer platform for Web3 solutions on Polkadot. So what does this platform consist of? It consists of a family of products. You can see there's a POP website. We'll take a look at that later. And the POP website, you can think of it as the face of the platform. Whereas POP docs, that's where it's like, okay, I'm interested in POP, how do I get started? How do I start building? Well, that's where you go from the website to the documentation and start going through the docs and like learning how to build your Web3 solution. POP CLI is a tool in which you can build. And POP network, that's where you can deploy your logic, your Web3 logic to a production network. So we're going to drill down into these. So on the left-hand side there, you see that's the website on pop.io. And then on the right, that's the documentation. The documentation, it has guides. So guides on like how to start out, also has tutorials, and we're looking to expand. So over the coming months, you're going to see this expand, more documentation. We're really passionate about documentation and having a good developer experience. So we see this as like a key component to the POP platform. POP CLI is the all-in-one Polkadot development tool. So with POP CLI, developers can develop smart contracts, ink smart contracts, or app chains. So in Polkadot, app chains are parachains, right? So you can use this tool to rapidly spin up a smart contract. You can use this tool to rapidly create a parachain, an app chain. You can use it to build the app chain. You can use it to build a smart contract. You can use it to test a smart contract. You can use it to deploy. You can even use POP CLI to spin up a network, a Polkadot network with several parachains, a Polkadot network with your parachain for testing purposes. You can also use POP CLI to deploy your smart contracts. POP CLI is constantly getting developed, and we really take user feedback because we want to create a tool that is enjoyable for developers to build with. And you can think of it as like their best companion. POP network, high level, it's an answer to the question of like, how do I deploy a smart contract on Polkadot? Simple question, right? So with POP network, it uses DOT as its native token. So you can deploy a smart contract to POP network using DOT. You can transact on POP network using DOT. You don't need any other token. You can just use the same token as the relay chain, as the Polkadot relay chain. So once again, it's a bit more of a like that DevX seamless experience. POP network also uses Ink. So I think many of you are familiar with Ink that are on this, that are listening to this. But those of you who aren't, Ink is a programming language. It was created by Parity. Parity is the company behind Polkadot, the company that created Polkadot. So Ink was made hand in hand with Polkadot. It's a programming language for smart contracts. Ink is Rust. So when you're writing smart contracts, you're writing it in Rust. When you're writing in Ink, you're writing in Rust. You can think of Ink as like Rust with some extensions that can improve your experience for writing smart contracts. And those extensions, you can think of them as like macros, right? So macro magic. Ink, from my personal experience, is a great programming language to write smart contracts in, especially if you're in the Polkadot tech stack, where Polkadot tech stack, right? If you're in Substrate, Polkadot SDK, you're building blockchains, parachains, it's all Rust. So you're investing in the Rust stack. And also when you're investing in Rust, when you're working with Ink, you have access to all of the Rust ecosystem, all the Rust tooling. So POP network in summary, you can think of it as a generic Ink smart contract platform. And like we said, you can use DOT to deploy the smart contracts. And so whatever you envision, you want to write a smart contract in such a way, you write it, you can use POP CLI to create it. I'll show you. And then you write that logic, and then you can deploy it on POP network using the relay chain's native token. But POP network doesn't end there. It's not just a generic smart contract platform. We're taking it a step further. So we're building something very unique in POP network. So previously, if you wanted to access like Polkadot SDK runtime level features, you'd have to build a parachain. You'd have to be on the blockchain level. So if I'm building a parachain, I can say, okay, in my parachain's runtime, I want the assets palette. I want NFTs palette. I want all these palettes that are available in Frame, right, in Substrate, which is inside the Polkadot SDK. And you can piece these palettes together, kind of like Lego building blocks, to create your parachain's runtime, right? So then you have a powerful blockchain with all this customized logic. So what we're building with POP network is the ability to take these runtime level features that were only previously available to the blockchain level, to the parachains, and we're hoisting these features up to the smart contract level. So as a smart contract developer, you'll be able to tap into these powerful Polkadot SDK runtime level features from the smart contract level. And how we're doing that is we're building this API within POP network. It's called POP API. And feature by feature, we're rolling out different features that are accessible from the smart contract level. So you can think of, when you think about like all the palettes that are in Frame, right? Like for example, assets palette, right? Fungibles. NFTs, like there's a really nice NFTs palette with all this NFTs logic, right? That previously you could not access from the smart contract level. So with POP API, you will be able to access that. You'll be able to write more powerful smart contracts, tapping into that Polkadot logic, those Polkadot features. Thinking about, like, for example, XCM, right? Cross-chain messaging. That's one of the, say, like the selling points of Polkadot, that you have all these blockchains, running in parallel, and they can communicate with each other. And the way to communicate is through XCM. However, XCM is super complex. It's really complicated. And one of the things that POP API is working on, that we're working on, is abstracting that a bit, and the ability for a smart contract developer to do cross-chain messaging, tapping into XCM, but without having to become an XCM expert. So we're simplifying the developer experience. You no longer have to build necessarily a parachain. A lot of the solutions you can build on the smart contract level using Ink. So if you like that, if you're interested, okay, it's like, okay, that sounds interesting. How do I get started? So I'm going to walk you through like using POP CLI and just like a flow of like, okay, create a contract, build a contract, and go through that. So let me exit here out of the presentation. And just to show you like the website, right? We're talking about the website. Here's the website on pop.io. And you can see here, like it says, okay, so, you start building, cargo install POP CLI. POP CLI is a crate. And then I already ran that on my command line. And so I'm going to pull up my terminal here. And just so everybody knows, the version of POP CLI that I'm running is 0.3.0. Okay. And if you're ever curious, let me make this a little bit larger. If you're ever curious of like, what are the POP CLI commands? There's two ways that you can go about it. So one way is you can say pop help, and you can see here, okay, here's a pop command. The command's available. You can use pop install. So pop install is a command that it helps set up the development environment. It installs the required packages that are necessary to do either app chain development or smart contract development. Pop new command, you can use pop new to generate a new parachain. You can do pop new to create a palette, right? A palette that goes into a parachain. You can also use pop new to create a smart contract, which is what we're going to do today. And pop build is just, you can use pop build to build a parachain, smart contract, or even Rust package. So you can use pop build for Rust packages, which is interesting. Pop call is, you can use pop call to call a smart contract. So once the contract is live, it's instantiated, right? You can use pop call and call the different messages on that Inc smart contract. Pop up is probably the coolest one. Pop up is the one that you can spin up a local network, right? You can say you want to spin up a Polkadot relay chain with these parachains. Pop up also allows you to deploy your smart contract. Pop test is for testing a smart contract, and then pop clean is to remove any artifacts, because as you all know, that those of you who have been developing on Polkadot for a while, Polkadot is constantly getting updated, new releases and such. So as you're using the POP CLI tool, over time, you're going to get like outdated, you're going to have like, the Polkadot 1.8, and then Polkadot's already on 1.9 and so on. So pop clean allows you to clean those older artifacts so that it doesn't remain in your system and take up space. So let's get started. So the first command here that I'm going to do is I actually want to create a new smart contract. So I'm going to say pop new, and I'm going to say, so pop new, like I said, you can create contract or app chain, right? So I'm going to say contract, and there's two ways. Let me just show you. There's two ways to go about pop new. I can manually specify my contract using flags. So if I do pop help here on the contract, you can see that there's the options here, right? These flags. So I can say, okay, the contract type that I want, these are the different contract types. And then the template. So if I want like an ERC20, so there's already some pre-built, there's some templates that are available in the POP CLI that POP CLI can create for you. Some notable ones, like these are pretty cool, right? An ERC20 token, ERC721. You can do different, it supports different templates, right? So you can manually specify these flags if you prefer that route, or you can do the interactive way. So I'm going to show you the interactive way, the one that with the guidance. So if I say pop new contract and I hit return, that's the interactive way. So it prompts you, it says, okay, which template do you want, right? So do you want one out of the examples? Do you want an ERC-based contract or a PSP one? And so over time, we will expand on this, right? As we're building POP CLI, there will be more features, more templates and such. And it's really great. Like if you guys use this, we really want to hear your feedback of like what you see as useful, right? What do you want to see here? So for today, let's go with an example. And you can see the different examples here of the different contracts. DNS contract for domain name service example. That's a pretty cool one. So we're going to start today with the Hello World, the Flipper one. And what would you like your project to be named? So I'm going to call it Flipper. And there. Okay, so generation complete. The results is not guaranteed. Okay, so next steps, CD into Flipper, enjoy hacking, use pop build, use pop. Okay, so we're going to do that. So I'm going to CD into Flipper. I'm going to open up my editor. So that's opening up. And you can see here the link to the documentation there, learn.onpop.io. That's taking a minute. My editor. Okay, so open it up, make this a little bit larger. All right, so just a little bit larger. Okay, so cargo.toml. My cargo file right here. So I want to show you really quick, right? This is an Ink contract, right? Most of you are familiar with this, but just to confirm, here's my dependency. And you can see there's the Ink dependency. We're on version 5 right now. Okay. And if we go into librs, so while I go over this, I'm going to run pop build. So pop build, I'm going to build my contract. All right, that's going to take a minute. Let that compile. All right, it's compiling. All right, so this is a contract. Those of you who are not familiar, right? It's an Ink contract. It's like the Hello World. You can see, you know, when I was talking about, it's just Rust. You can see, those of you who are familiar with Rust, it's Rust with these macros, right, to simplify smart contract development, right? So here's where we define our storage. It happens to be that in this Flipper contract, we have a storage named value that is a Boolean. And the whole point of this contract is just that you can flip that bool, right? In the storage, it gets instantiated, like you can see the constructor here. So it gets instantiated to whatever initial value you specify it. If you don't specify anything, then the default constructor will kick in, and the default is false, okay? So this contract has the ability for you, it has a message, right? Like we can call this message, and it's the flip message, it's a function, it's Rust. And when you call flip, what does it do? It simply flips the Boolean in storage, right? So it gets initialized to false. If we call flip, it'll get flipped to true. And this contract also has another message, the second message, which allows you to read the value. It just simply returns the value in storage. Okay, so very simple Hello World contract. And we also have tests. So those of you who are, you know, familiar with Rust, this is Rust, right? We have 2 tests here. One test is we call the constructor, and then we assert that we're going to call flipper.get, and it should return false, right? So we're going to run this. Let's see if it compiled, and it's done, right? So we ran pop build, it built. It's actually pretty fast. This is Ink, right? One of the things that I like about Ink, like this is pretty cool, right? Ink outputs WASM, and you can see the original WASM size was 35 kilobytes. And because it's you know, Rust, and Rust has its optimizations, it's now 10.3. Not bad, right? Like 3x, like it's 10.3. And you can see that with Ink, you get the output here. You're going to get a .contract file that has the code of the contract plus the metadata. And then you're going to get a WASM file that only has the contract's code. And then as well, you get a file called flipper.json that only has the metadata. So this is inside the target folder. If I open up the target and then go to Ink, and you can see there's a contract. Like I could even open it for you to show you. So that's the WASM. You can see it says WASM there. And if I scroll down, you should see the metadata somewhere down here. Yeah, that's the metadata right there. You can see it's like, it's all condensed, right? So that's the metadata for the contract. And then if I just want to see the metadata, I can just go to the JSON. It's all expanded. It's nice here, right? So cool. My contract got compiled. I mean, we're in the Rust tech stack, right? Like Rust is pretty cool. Like I just want to show you that if I run pop build, and if I say, okay, I want to build for release, right? So I'm ready for, like, let's say I'm ready for production, right? My contract is good. Actually, like even before that, like let's just run pop test to make sure the test pass, pop test contract. So it's going to run the tests that are defined here. we have two tests. One is this assertion here. And the other one is this one here that we're asserting, okay, it's false. And then we call flip. So we're flipping the storage value. So the new storage should be true, right? So we assert that it's true afterwards. So we have two tests. Also, one note, you can see down here, there's end-to-end tests. This will leave for another day to cover this another day, but Inc does support end-to-end tests, which improves, the testing capability for your smart contracts. Today, we're just running the unit tests. So while that builds, just want to show you, right? So if we're on the website and if I click get started or if I click learn, it'll drop you into the POP docs. All right. And this is really where the learning happens. And in this upper drop down here, you can learn about smart contracts, how to use POP CLI with smart contracts or app chain development, right? Because POP CLI does support app chain development just as much as it supports smart contract development. So that's there available for you. Today, we're going to work on smart contracts. And you can see I'm in the smart contract section, and there's the guides, the tutorials, and even the POP CLI command. So like if I'm interested, like right now, we're doing POP test. So if I click test here, it has a bit of documentation on testing. So that's another area where you can go for like a little bit more into like the POP CLI commands. Okay, so the tests ran, and you can see default works passed, and the second one passed. So both of them passed. So okay, so it looks good. So like let's say, okay, my contract is good, and I now want to compile it again, but this time for production, right? So release. So remember last time, the size of the contract. Let's see what it does now. It's going to take a minute here. Let's see. It's actually pretty fast. So this is amazing, right? This is because like we're using Inc, and Inc uses Rust, right? Look at the size of it now. We started with like the debug mode when we're just running pop build. That was debug mode, and it was like 30 kilobytes, and then it got optimized, right? We're now at 1.7. Like just showing you an example of like why I like Inc and Rust. The compiler has some optimizations. Okay, so we ran pop test, we ran pop build, and we saw production. So let's say now we want to deploy the contract, right? So like even like if I go back to the docs, right? Like you can say create new contract. Let me make this larger. Build your contract, run your unit test. We kind of like did that. So like deploying your contract locally is the next logical step, right? So we're actually going to look, if you wanted to, like you could read this documentation, but I'll go over it with you. So what we want to do is first, when we deploy the contract, we have to know the gas cost, like how much will it cost to upload and instantiate the contract. So when we say deploy in Inc terminology, we're actually going to upload the contract to a node, a substrate node, and it's going to upload it. The pop-up command will upload it, and it'll instantiate it. Okay, so like actually, if we look here, if I go back here and I say pop up contract -- help, you can see the different options that are available, right? So you can see we got to specify constructor, otherwise the default is new. The arguments to the constructor, so whatever constructor and arguments you have in your contract. Specify gas, proof size, the URL, otherwise the default is localhost 9944. And then you have the ability to do a dry run, which that's going to estimate the gas usage, but it won't actually submit the transaction. Just so you see an estimate, so you know how much you need to pay, right? And if for some reason you ever want to just upload the contract and not instantiate it, you can pass in this flag and it'll just do the upload. So that's kind of nice. So let's try this. So I'm going to say pop up contract, and I could specify the constructor. So the constructor will be the new constructor. So if I go back, right, so just to confirm, so this one here, right, this is the one that I'm calling, and you can see it accepts a value, right, it accepts an argument. So I'm going to say -- args, and I'm going to pass in, it has to be string encoded. So I'm going to pass in false, Boolean false. And then you have to, since we're uploading and instantiating, you have to pass in the account that will be doing this. In our case, we're going to use the dev account Alice, and we're going to do a dry run to see, how much this will cost. So that looks good to me. So let's hit return. So that was pretty quick, right? So it gives you the estimate there. You can see the estimate, the gas limit estimate, and there it is. That's the ref time and the proof size. Okay, so based on this, you need enough to cover this cost based on the estimate. I always like to I want to show you, first for me, the logical step is to get the estimate so you know how much more or less it'll cost. Once you have that defined, then you can remove the dry run flag and you could execute this, right? So just to show you though, there are defaults, right? So I could say remove the constructor because that's the default as we saw in the POP CLI options. And the argument will be false, so we're instantiating it to false. I think I can even remove, the default, just so you guys know, the default account is Alice, all right? So if you want, if you know it's gonna be Alice, you're using Alice, you could even remove that. So you could simplify the command even further. So I'm gonna upload and instantiate my contract using dry run, and boom, okay? You still get your gas estimate. So that looks good to me. So just so you guys know, behind the scenes, what POP CLI does, it'll spin up a substrate node, a solo chain, right? It'll spin up a substrate node that has pallet contracts running in order for it to do this dry run test. And when I run this without dry run, it will actually do the same thing. It'll spin up a substrate node with pallet contracts running, and it'll be on port 9944. The RPC server will be running on that port, and it'll actually upload and instantiate to that node. Okay, so the first time you run this command, it'll prompt you. It'll ask you, would you like to download and install this? POP CLI will prompt you for that, and you say yes, and it'll install it for you. It'll install a node, and it'll run it in the background. Okay, I already have this running. I can show you. So if I do a reload here, this is Polkadot.js. Make it larger. So you can see I already have it running. I already had a transaction 24 hours ago. You can even see here, it's running on port 9944, right? So it's there. So I'm gonna run this command. So it's gonna pop up contract, and it's going to upload and instantiate. Wow, that was fast. Contract deployed and instantiated. The contract is, always save this address. Copy it. Deployment complete, right? POP CLI. So if I go back to the Polkadot.js, you can even see the confirmation there. Here's the code, pallet contracts, this is the contracts palette. These are all the events from the contracts palette. That's the balances palette, right? So you can see the trail there that it left, all the transactions left, right? It's even been instantiated by Alice, right? So I could even click here and see the details there, right? So one of the things that I like to do as part of my development process is I'll go into the developer dropdown contracts, and I like to see my contract here. The contract exists, okay? It's just not showing up here. You have to set it up. So add an existing contract, and the contract address is the one that I copied, right? Copy. And I'll call the contract flipper to stay the same. So contract ABI, you got to look that up. I believe mine it's in that target folder. So I'm going to navigate there, flipper, target, inc, and .contract file. And you can see it reads it, picks it up right there, right? That's pretty cool. There's the constructors and the messages that are available. So save, and it now shows up here. Okay. So you can see here, you can interact with it in the Polkadot.js. So the next step I would say is okay, we deployed the contract. Now, say we want to call it, right? So pop call contract. So just to show you, say help, and you can see the available options. We have to specify a message. We have to specify the contract, right? Which contract are we interacting with, the message, and there's additional flags. So let's check it out. Let's do pop call contract, and then I have to specify the contract. I believe I still have it in my clipboard. Let's see. Yep. Okay. So pop call contract, and the message that I want to call, if we look here, first what I want to do is I want to read the value that's in storage. So I want to call the get. All right. So I'm going to call the get message. And just so you guys are aware, when we're reading storage with Inc. and pallet contracts, it doesn't need to be submitted as a transaction, right? Because a transaction costs money, right? It costs tokens, right? There's a fee, transaction fee. If we're just reading storage, we can actually read storage from the RPC. So we can, so that's what I'm going to show you here. I'm going to call get, and let's see here. So because it's not a transaction, I don't need to specify an account. All right. So let's try this. So I'm going to say return. So there it is. Okay. So the result, you can see it came back as successful, and the result is false, which is correct, right? So we uploaded, instantiated the contract using pop-up. And when we instantiate the contract, it instantiates with a default constructor, which calls a default, which is false, right? So inside of storage, the value is false. And it says your call was not executed because we did an RPC call, right? So let's try now executing. So I'm going to run a similar command, but instead of get, I'm going to say flip. So this is going to be an actual transaction. So I do need to specify the account, and it's going to be the dev account Alice, which, by the way, Alice is funded, right? Because that's, you can see here, Alice already has quite a lot of tokens. So go back here, contract. Okay, cool. So I'm going to call flip. Flip, if we remember from earlier, it'll flip the value, right? Using Alice, the Alice account for the transaction fee, for the transaction payment. And since this is a transaction, it will get executed. We have to use the -x or -- execute flag like that. All right. And if we wanted to, we could also include the dry run command in here to get the estimate. So I'm not going to do that for now. I'm just going to execute because I know Alice has enough. And wow, that was okay. That happened. That was quick. By default, it will do the dry run, but then it'll immediately call the contract. Okay. And what you're seeing here, this is the trail, like, the log trail of the events that occurred as the contract was getting called. And you can see here, this is balances palette. Withdrawal was called. Contracts palette. It's showing that the contract was called. Balances palette, there was a deposit. Transaction payment palette, the transaction fee paid. These are the events, right? So it looks like it completed successful, right? I mean, if we wanted to confirm, we can just rerun the command that we ran previously, which is the get, right? And it should now show it as true for the Boolean true. So if I do true, there it is, true. Okay, so we're just using POP CLI to make contract calls. So you can see, like, you never have to leave the tool, right? It's kind of like your development buddy. So if I go back here and I go to the Explorer, you can also see, the block, it's a new block number, and you can see that in here, the contract was called on block 4, right there. Okay, and if I believe if I go back to the contracts section, yeah, you can see there's now a number 4 here. Make it larger. You can see that right there, number 4, right? So it's just another way of looking at it. So that's pop build, that's pop up, and then pop call. I also showed you pop test. The only other one that I would say is okay, so let's say we've been, okay, it looks good locally, right? Now we want to take it to the next step, right? We want to deploy on Testnet. So we want to deploy on POP network, right? And POP network is on the Paseo testnet. So those of you who are not familiar, Paseo is the equivalent of like the Polkadot relay chain, but the testnet version of it. All right. So the token of Paseo is PAS, meaning that you can see here, this is POP network. This is the one that's connected to Paseo. So the token here will be PAS, right? And it's been running for a while. You can see the block number there. All right, so this is the POP network testnet. And if we go back to the POP docs, everything that I've been discussing so far, it's all in the documentation. So let's say we want to deploy on POP testnet, right? The one that I showed you right there in this tab here, right? How would we do this? Well, first I would say, first we should run, you know, if we're like, let's say we're ready for production, right? We're ready to deploy on the testnet. Let's say that's, you know, an equivalent of like some production, right? So I would say the next logical step is make sure that your end-to-end tests run, and Inc supports end-to-end tests, right? And by the way, this is the Inc website. It's use.inc. I really recommend it if you want to take a deeper dive into Inc. There's a lot of, you know, it covers the different macros that are available. It covers the basics. It also, you can see the basics here, right? Like how to work with Inc. So I would say like, as you're learning, like for me, my own personal experience was like, I'm back and forth between POP docs and use Inc, POP docs and use Inc, right? So let's run our end-to-end tests, right? So end-to-end tests, you can see in the librs, there's already some tests written here, right? It'll instantiate the contract, you know, and it'll do some assertions, okay? So I'm just going to show you how to do that in POP CLI, how to run that. So it's still the POP test command, but you pass in a flag. So let me just show you. Everything's in the help, right? So POP test contract. And you can see there, okay, so POP test contract. And we're going to use the end-to-end test, run the end-to-end test in the contract. So POP test contract. And I'm going to use the shorthand form -e. And just to, so those of you who have never used end-to-end tests with Inc, it actually uses the node that's the substrate contracts node. That is, it's a solo chain that's running pallet contracts, right? So it uses that to run your end-to-end test. So you can think of these end-to-end tests as a more complete test, right? So it's one more check mark that you put before going into production. And you can see there, it ran the end-to-end tests and they passed. Okay, so that's a pretty good sign. All right, I feel like this contract is ready for production. So the next step is to deploy it to the POP testnet. So this, I'm going to leave this for another day. But basically, the idea here is that we need to fund the account, whichever account is going to upload and instantiate. In our case, it has been Alice, right? We need to fund Alice on the Paseo relay chain test network. We need to fund her with some pass tokens. And there's a Paseo faucet for that, okay, where you can fund the deployment account, in this case, Alice's account, with some pass tokens. And then there's going to be, we need to transfer, we need to teleport those tokens from the Paseo relay chain to the POP network testnet. And luckily, you don't need to know XCM for that. There's actually a UI, this one right here, that you can simply specify the source network, which will be Paseo relay chain here, and the receiving address, and it will do a transfer of the tokens from the Paseo account to the POPNet test account. And then, so then you'll have the pass tokens on POPNet, and you'll be able to do the deployment from there. So this is all in the docs right here, okay? So even the command here. And I leave this as an exercise for you. We'll cover this in a different tutorial on another day, because I do want to have time for Q&A today. Also, another thing about the docs, is that if you ever see something like an outdated command or something, on the upper right-hand corner here, there's submit an issue. So please feel free to submit an issue if you see anything like a typo or anything like that. Okay. So that's pretty much it from my end that I want to cover. So let's hop back into the presentation. And I want to talk a little bit about the community. So I hope you kind of felt that, like, as I was going through everything, you get this feeling like that we're constantly shaping POP, right? We're trying to improve POP, like things that are very important to us. When I say us, I say Rogue, the team behind POP, is developer experience, right? We're a small engineering team. You can see the team there. Most of us came from Parity, so we worked at Parity. So the reason I say that is because we saw firsthand, what it was like to develop on Polkadot. Like we engaged with a lot of external partners, people who wanted to build on Polkadot, right? And we saw the grievances, we saw the pain points, and so that's part of the reason why we're building POP. Like, we want to improve the developer experience. We want it to make it like enjoyable to build on Polkadot, right? So that's why I would say, like, if you want to help out, if you want to be a part of this, if you want to be part of the community, join the Telegram, right? That's the QR code. Or you can just type it in on pop.io. And B, use POP, right? Use the POP family of products, use POP Network, use POP CLI, and give us feedback, right? Like, because we're in one mode, right? We're building POP, we're building POP CLI, let's say, right? And the other half, I would say, is like, we want the community to use it so that the community can say, hey, I've been using POP for a while, I've been developing contracts, and this is my feedback, right? And we take that feedback and we improve the product, right? We iterate. So we constantly want to iterate the product. We want to improve it. So I would say you guys are vital to POP. The other way that you can connect with us is on Twitter. That's our Twitter handle. So that's there. I'd say that one way for like developers to connect with us, like if you just go to like the POP CLI, this is the POP CLI repo, and I'm on the issues tab. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit here. Okay, you can see a lot of tasks here that one could pick up and like kind of like raise their hand and be like, hey, can I take this? Is this good? And then like we'll give you a thumbs up or something, and it'll go directly into POP CLI, right? So you'll work with the developers on our team and get this into a PR, right? And we'll merge it in, right? So actually, I think if you go to the main page, like, yeah, the last commit here, let me make it larger, was an external contributor from our community. So you can see it's a great open source project. Like right now, I can tell you, I've been actively part of this PR here, improve palette template generation. So this PR is a really, really cool PR. It's an external contributor. His name is Tomas, and he's been working. You can see he's created this PR here. Like, feel free to read it later. It's really nicely written. But it's the idea of when you do like POP new palette, you're creating a new palette and improving the developer experience around that. And there's even some stuff in there about possibly creating an advanced mode. So like, there's the default mode, which is like, okay, so people who are learning, how to build on Polkadot, they want to create a new palette. That's pretty cool. Okay. But what about for the seasoned developers that have been already created more than one palette, right? So we may be catering for that audience as well. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening there. So that's it from my side. Maybe we can open it up now to any questions.
We've actually had quite a few questions throughout your session.
Okay.
Are you able to see the stream currently?
Yeah, I see it. Yes, the chat, right?
If I put this up, can you see on the?
Yeah, I see. Simon, where are POP smart contracts deployed on a new network or an existing one? So the smart contracts, if we go back here to that command, So I'm inside of Flipper, right? So I say pop up contract help, right? So if I scroll up here, you can see here that there's a flag called -- URL, right? And in our case, I was using the default, right? So the default is that substrate node that's running in the background on my machine. That is that runs. It's a solo chain, right? That runs pallet contracts. That's the default. But if I wanted to specify a production network, you can do that using the URL flag. And actually, I think like in the POP docs, if we go to that tutorial, I have it here. There should be a section here where the command, yeah, like deploy here. This is actually pretty cool. Let me make it larger. You can see like in this, we're deploying to the POP network testnet, and I'm specifying here -- URL and the RPC endpoint of POP network where I want to deploy, right? So you can specify a custom RPC endpoint. It doesn't have to be POP network. Good question.
The next one, if you can see the screen.
What is debug mode? This contract was built in debug mode. Yeah, I mean, like when you're working with ink, like, so like, I think it might be somewhere here in the ink documentation. It's somewhere in the ink documentation, but like there's two ways to compile a contract. You know, so let's see, like where was I? Pop build -- help. So specifically contracts, right? We're building contracts. So pop build contract -- help. So you can see here, the default compilation includes debug functionality, increases contract size and gas usage. For production, always build in release mode to exclude debug features. So when I say pop build, right, I'm already in the contract directory, right? That's important to note. I'm inside the contract directory. So I can say pop build, right? It's going to default to debug, which it gives you some extra debug options. It's somewhere in the ink documentation where you can like debug some output, right? It's useful to debug your contract. It's also faster. Okay, if your contract is larger than like this Hello World Flipper, you're going to notice that when I run pop build, it compiles a lot faster in debug mode than it does in -- release, because -- release goes through some optimizations that that makes the contract size smaller, as we saw, and that takes longer. So typically when you're developing, you use debug, which is the default.
And the next question.
Can we add and integrate new palettes on already created substrate project using POP CLI? So that is on our roadmap. That's a great question. I mean, when you think of POP CLI, right, it's such a great tool for the Polkadot ecosystem, right? It's really something that's missing, and that's kind of the reason why we went about and are building that. But you know, let's highlight our building that. We are still building that. We're still building out new features. So, and that's why we want to hear from you guys too. But we do have a roadmap. So that's a great point. Like, let me show you. If you go to, I believe it's the overview section. Where was the roadmap? Oh, it's on the website. So if we go to onpop.io, is it in the somewhere here? I think was it in the about? Maybe it's in the about. Why pop? Meet the team. Want to learn. Yeah, the roadmap is somewhere, but like just to say, it's our like pop new palette, I would say, is like the first iteration, right? Like let's be able to create a new palette. The next step, I would say, is like the ability to add that palette into the runtime. So that is a little bit more complicated, especially if it's not like a Hello World substrate chain, right? If it's like a chain that's already in production and you want the CLI tool to add a palette into a chain that's already been modified, right? But that is on our roadmap. So great question.
Very nice. And then we've got from somebody else, but on a similar subject.
What services do POP provide to substrate chains? So I would say So if we say pop, so we'll start with this. So like pop dash dash help, you can see that I like this command. Most of these features here are also available to substrate chains. So pop new, pop build, pop call, not pop call. Pop call is actually you can't actually do pop call yet with calling to do a transaction on a running substrate chain, but that is on our roadmap. So that will come. So that'll be interesting. You'll be able to use POP CLI to submit transactions, but pop up, pop build, pop new, right? So like more comprehensively, like if you go into the pop docs, go into the app chains on Polkadot section, and you can see the guides here. So when you want to create a new parachain, you can use, there's different parachain templates that are already available. So for example, this would be for another session, I would say another workshop, but like if I say pop new dash dash help, you can see there that you can create parachain, you can create palette, right? So if we say pop new parachain dash dash help, you can see that there's different templates available. There's the standard hello world template. There's a contracts template if you want to build a contracts parachain. If you want to build an assets parachain, that's available there as a template. EVM, if you want to build an EVM Polkadot parachain, go for it. And then this will be also growing as time goes by, and you can customize it as well, your own custom symbol. Other than dot, you can use your own whatever you want to do there. Decimals, how many decimals there are, defaults. The initial token endowment, there's a default there as well. The other cool part that we just did is that when you do create a new parachain, you can then create the artifacts for the parachain. So like for example, and it is interactive as well, just like the smart contract. Like I just do pop new parachain, hit return, and you can see there, okay, there's different templates there. We do have an Open Zeppelin template that's available. We have templates that are were maintained by Parity but are still useful. So this also, we'd love to hear feedback from you guys on these templates as well, right? So that is available for you there. One more thing that I want to highlight there is the pop build. So you can use pop build to build a parachain. So just like you did pop build, you just do pop build inside the directory, and it'll build the parachain, right, or the substrate solo chain. Okay. And then pop up is the other one. So you can see it's available for the parachain. So if I do parachain, you can see there's a lot of options for pop up, right? So that's probably that's one of the most exciting commands I'd say for POP CLI, that, like I was saying, like that you can spin up a network. So that's available there. Any other questions?
Yeah, we do have a few. Just in the chat, Wario has said this is super cool, and then asked, is POP going to be a Coretime provider?
We're looking into that. So
also the roadmap has been found.
I can tell you that is on the roadmap. It's not going to happen right away, right? But it is on the roadmap.
Very nice. We have only a few minutes left, and there's still a few more questions. We've had a lot of questions, and as you've been going through your talk.
Yeah. Okay. Is this Simon? What is needed to generate interactions from the front end on this smart contract? So I'd say front end, that's a different, like if you're saying like in terms of UI or in terms of like Polkadot.js, because like, you could use Polkadot.js here, and like I could literally click execute if I have enough in the account, and I can interact with a smart contract on that way, right? This is front end. If you're talking about like building a React app around there, I would say like that's more like there's something called Inkathon. Maybe take a look at that. It's like it shows how to like interact with ink contracts with a front end. So maybe take a look at Inkathon.
Nice. And the last few questions before we wrap up. You sort of touched on this, but towards the end, but this was asked about halfway through.
So the difference between unit test and end-to-end test, end-to-end is more robust, right? Like if we go here back to the contract, unit test is just like simple. Like if we go to the unit test, it's just calling the functions, right? So you could say it's not like a legit like complete test, because with the end-to-end test, Inc has this capacity to use the substrate contracts node that it's a substrate solo chain that has pallet contracts, and it uses that, and it'll take this contract just like you saw in the target folder, right? And it's compiled, and it'll instantiate the contract against that node, right? So you're getting like a real, like, the real world kind of test there, right? That's why it's end to end. And you can see it'll instantiate it, and it has Inc has all the APIs for that, right? So if I scroll up here, it's using the feature end-to-end tests. And if I go in my cargo.toml, you can see there's actually a dependency for that. All right. And you can read up more on that in the use Inc, like the logistics of like what exactly it's doing. You can see here in the use Inc, there's a section called end-to-end tests, and it describes a bit more in depth of like the pieces involved, right? And what's interesting is like it's got this section here that like you got to install contracts node, here's the command, you got to export environment variable, right? POP CLI does that all for you. You don't need to do that, right? All you need to do as a developer is write the actual end-to-end test.
And one more question, so I think this should be quick.
Pop new palette PR. When is that merging? Who wrote that? So pop new palette, I mean, the actual command, it's available. So like it's there, right? So you could play with it. So we're just looking at improving it a bit more to be a little bit more tightly coupled with the Polkadot SDK docs, right? Because that's like the de facto for Polkadot documentation. So the template that it'll generate in default mode for pop new palette will be a Polkadot SDK template that's in the Polkadot SDK repo. Okay, so it's like kind of like the hello world template for that. And then from there, you can start playing around and customizing it your way. And then as a separate PR, we're looking into creating like some advanced mode. And honestly, like once that gets merged in, which could be this week, once that gets merged in, we would really love feedback from the community, those of you who've been developing for a while in Polkadot, on the DevX around that, how to improve that. Like, how would you see that advanced mode as useful, right? But overall, we want feedback from everything in POP CLI. Like, how is this useful as you develop smart contracts or as you develop app chains? How can we make it more useful, right? Because if we're building a tool that people don't find useful, then there's no point in it, right? So, yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Bruno, for that really, really interesting talk. People seem to have found it really useful. So I'm sure a few people will be rewatching the recording for bits of the demo there. There's a few people typing, but I'm assuming they're just typing to say thank you. I think you've answered everyone's questions. Yeah, lots of thank yous in the chat. There we go. So we will end there for today. There is one more session left of the Polkadot Educate series, but coming up is the Polkadot Inc. Bootcamp. So we've sort of touched on Inc. as a programming language in this session. So if you're interested in more workshops on Inc., Bruno is actually running one of the workshops in the series, so you can come back for more of him then. Sign up for that on the Encode Club website. I'll send a link. Actually, I think I sent a link in the email before this session, so do make sure to sign up for that and come back for more talks with Bruno and Rogue and other partners. So we look forward to seeing you then.